Officer! Officer, you need to arrest this man immediately. I demand you take action right now. He's blocking public property. This is a clear violation.
Ma'am, please calm down. We just need to talk.
I won't calm down until he moves it. This is a clear violation of municipal code and HOA regulations.
All right, ma'am, I understand your concern, but...
Can you believe this? She's been at it all day.
Let me take you back to where this all began.
My name is Garrett Wolfson, and I'm a mechanical engineer.
Well, technically, I'm a former patent attorney turned engineer. I spent 15 years in litigation before I decided I'd had enough of courtrooms and corporate battles. I wanted something quieter, something peaceful. Funny how life works out, isn't it? I'd moved into Riverside Meadows HOA about 3 years ago. It seemed perfect at the time. Tree-lined streets, well-maintained properties, that kind of suburban dream everyone talks about. The neighborhood had rules, sure, but what HOA doesn't? I figured I'd keep my lawn trimmed, pay my dues, and live my life in peace. I had no idea I was walking into a battlefield. It was a Tuesday morning in late September. I remember because I had a critical conference call scheduled for 10 o'clock with a client in Germany. I'd been up since 5:30, preparing my presentations, double-checking my calculations, the kind of work that requires absolute focus. I'd parked my car in my driveway the night before, my own driveway, mind you, exactly where I'd parked it hundreds of times before. My silver Honda Accord, nothing fancy, perfectly legal. At 9:45, just 15 minutes before my call, I heard it. Sharp, insistent knocking on my front door. Not the friendly neighbor kind of knock, the kind that demands immediate attention. I opened the door to find a woman standing there, mid-50s, immaculately dressed in a pearl white pantsuit, her hair styled in that aggressive kind of perfection that screams control. Behind her stood 2 sheriff's deputies, looking somewhat uncomfortable. This was Cordelia Blackstone, chairwoman of the Architectural Review Board. "Mr. Wolfson, I am Cordelia Blackstone, and I'm here to inform you that you are in egregious violation of community standards. Your vehicle is encroaching on public property, and I have called law enforcement to have you arrested and your car towed immediately." I looked past her at my car. The front bumper extended maybe 6 inches past the edge of my driveway apron. 6 inches into what's called a public easement, a strip of land specifically designed for exactly this purpose. Now, here's where my legal background came in handy. I remained calm. I addressed the deputies directly. "Officers, I appreciate you responding to this call, but I believe there's been a misunderstanding. That area is a public easement, designated in the county plat map as permissible parking space. I'm happy to show you the documentation." "Nonsense. This is a violation of our community aesthetic standards. Section 12, subsection 4 of our covenants clearly states..." "With respect, ma'am, HOA covenants cannot supersede county ordinances regarding public easements. The deputies can verify this if needed." One of the deputies, a younger man named Rodriguez, pulled out his tablet and checked. His partner, a veteran officer named Mitchell, was already nodding. "Ma'am, he's correct. This is a legal public easement. He's not blocking anything, and he's certainly not committing any arrestable offense." "This is unacceptable. Do you know who I am? I'll be filing a complaint with the sheriff's office. This is dereliction of duty." The deputies apologized to me and left. Cordelia stood on my doorstep for another 30 seconds, her face turning a shade of crimson I didn't know was humanly possible. Then, without a word, she turned on her heel and marched back to her Mercedes. I thought that was the end of it. I was so very, very wrong. 48 hours later, I received my first violation notice. Actually, that's not quite accurate. I received 18 pages of violation notices, delivered by certified mail requiring my signature. I sat at my kitchen table, coffee growing cold, reading through the absurdity. Violation 001. Grass height exceeds community standard by 0.3 inches in the northwest quadrant of front lawn. Violation 002. Mailbox flag positioned at non-regulation angle. Violation 003. Garden hose visible from street view for 7 minutes on September 24th. Violation 004. Window blinds in non-approved shade of white. It went on and on. Each violation carried a $50 fine. The total came to $1,350. I'm a methodical person. I took photographs of everything. I measured my grass. It was exactly 2 3/4 inches, well within the 2 to 3 inch requirement. My mailbox flag was factory standard. The window blinds were the exact same blinds that came with the house when I bought it. Every single violation was either fabricated or so minor that no reasonable person would consider it a genuine infraction. But Cordelia wasn't finished, not by a long shot. The next week, I was on a video conference call with a potential client, a major automotive company considering licensing one of my designs. This was a career-defining moment, potentially worth 6 figures in contracts. At precisely 2 o'clock, right as I was presenting my technical specifications, I heard it. The roar of industrial-grade leaf blowers right outside my home office window. I glanced out and saw 2 workers in bright orange vests blowing leaves back and forth across my neighbor's already immaculate lawn. My neighbor, Jim, was standing on his porch looking confused and gesturing that he hadn't hired anyone. The noise was deafening. I couldn't hear myself think, let alone continue a professional presentation. I muted my microphone, but my client could see my frustration. I apologized, tried to move to another room, but the workers seemed to follow the noise around my house. I lost the contract. Then came the drone. I first noticed it hovering about 30 feet above my backyard on a Saturday morning. It was one of those expensive models with high-definition cameras, and it wasn't being subtle. It flew in a systematic pattern, clearly photographing every inch of my property. I went outside and waved at it. The drone didn't move, just kept hovering there, its camera pointed directly at me. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Then I filed a formal complaint with the HOA about unauthorized aerial surveillance of private property. I also contacted the FAA, since residential drone operation has strict regulations about privacy and flight patterns. Within 24 hours, Cordelia's drone operation was grounded. The FAA had sent her a warning letter about improper usage and potential privacy violations. Small victory, but I knew it would only make her angrier. The following Tuesday, I came home from grocery shopping to find decorative landscaping rocks arranged in a precise line across my front lawn. They weren't there when I'd left an hour earlier. The line was exactly 18 inches onto my property, measured from the sidewalk. It looked intentional, professional even. Realization dawning. She was claiming territory. I did what any reasonable person would do. I moved them back to where they belonged, which was clearly on the public easement based on the property survey I'd pulled from county records. 20 minutes later, Cordelia was at my door again, this time on her cell phone with 911. "Yes, I need to report a theft. My neighbor has stolen my property. Decorative rocks worth approximately $300. I demand immediate police response." Officer Rodriguez showed up again. He was starting to recognize me, starting to understand the situation. But here's where Cordelia made her mistake. My neighbor across the street, a retired school teacher named Estelle Chen, had security cameras covering the entire front of her property. She'd watched the whole thing. Estelle came over with her tablet and showed Rodriguez the footage. Cordelia's landscaping crew placing the rocks on my property. Cordelia directing them with hand gestures, pointing specifically at my land. Officially, Rodriguez explained to Cordelia that she'd actually committed trespassing and could face charges if she continued. She left without a word, but the look she gave me could have frozen molten steel. 2 weeks later, Estelle invited me over for tea. She seemed nervous, kept glancing at her windows like she was afraid of being watched. "Garrett, I need to tell you something. I probably shouldn't, but my nephew works for the U.S. Attorney's Office in the white-collar crime division. He mentioned something last week during dinner. There's a federal inquiry into HOA financial improprieties in our county, and Riverside Meadows is on the list." I set down my teacup. What kind of improprieties? He couldn't say much, but he mentioned something about maintenance contracts and related party transactions. He said if anyone in the neighborhood had legal experience, they might want to look into the public records. The HOA financial documents are available to homeowners upon request, you know. I thanked Estelle and went home immediately. That night, I began digging. I submitted a formal records request to the HOA board the next morning, citing my rights under state law to review all financial documents, contracts, and correspondence. They had 15 business days to comply. Cordelia tried to block it, naturally. She claimed the documents contained proprietary information and sensitive personal data. But I'd worded my request carefully, and the law was crystal clear. 3 weeks later, I received 4 boxes of documents. I spent the next 48 hours going through everything: bank statements, canceled checks, vendor contracts, email correspondence. As a former attorney, I knew what to look for: patterns, anomalies, connections that shouldn't exist. And I found them. Every major maintenance contract for the past 2 years had gone to the same vendor, Blackstone Services, LLC. Landscaping, pool maintenance, parking lot resurfacing, gutter cleaning, tree trimming, everything. The amounts were substantial: $8,000 for landscaping, $12,000 for pool maintenance, $15,000 for parking lot work. All told, approximately $43,000 over 24 months. I ran a corporate records search through the Arizona Corporation Commission database. Blackstone Services, LLC. Registered agent, Devin Blackstone, Phoenix, Arizona. Cordelia's brother. I didn't stop there. I verified everything. Devin Blackstone had no contractor's license in either Arizona or our state. No business insurance, no workers' compensation coverage. The address listed for Blackstone Services was a P.O. box at a UPS store. This wasn't just nepotism or a conflict of interest. This was fraud. Organized fraud. I cross-referenced the bank statements with the work orders. The checks were all signed by Cordelia as board chairwoman and countersigned by the treasurer, a man named Harold Pemberton, who seemed to rubber stamp everything Cordelia wanted. But I needed more. I needed to prove the services were either never performed or grossly overcharged. I needed evidence that would hold up in court. I started talking to neighbors, carefully, discreetly. "Hey, Jim, did you notice that pool maintenance last month? Seemed pretty quick, didn't it? Estelle, do you remember when they supposedly resurfaced the parking lot? I don't recall seeing any work crews." The responses confirmed my suspicions. Work was either not being done or was being done by unlicensed workers who did substandard jobs. The pool maintenance was particularly egregious. We'd paid $12,000 for a year of weekly service, but neighbors reported seeing maintenance crews maybe once a month, if that. Then I found it, the smoking gun. Buried in the email correspondence was a thread between Cordelia and someone identified only as DB, obviously Devin. The emails had been included in the document dump by mistake, probably printed out when someone hit Select All without thinking. From Cordelia to DB, dated 3 weeks ago. The natives are getting restless. That engineer is asking questions. We need to accelerate timeline. Recommend final extraction by end of month. Thinking sinkhole emergency. Requires immediate payment before proper bidding process. Can you make it look good? Response from DB. Can do. $18K should be believable for emergency repair. Have photos from Phoenix project that will work. Nobody knows Arizona geography here. We'll send invoice same day as discovery. You authorize payment immediately. Funds transfer to offshore account by end of business. Then we're ghosts. They were planning one final score, a fake emergency requiring immediate authorization of funds before vanishing with the money. But there was more, another email sent just 2 days ago. Getting tired of the persistent problem in Lot 47, may need permanent solution if continues to interfere with operations. Lot 47, my address. I didn't waste time. I called Sarah Haven. Sarah and I had worked together 15 years ago when I was still practicing law. She'd been a paralegal in our firm before joining the FBI. We'd stayed in touch over the years, exchanging Christmas cards and the occasional email. She was now a special agent in the white-collar crime division. Garrett, it's been months. How are you? Sarah, I need your professional help. I think I've stumbled onto an ongoing fraud scheme, and there may be an element of threat or intimidation involved. Tell me everything. I spent 90 minutes on the phone with her, walking through every detail, the harassment, the financial records, the emails, the threat. Send me everything, encrypted email. I'm going to loop in my supervisor and the U.S. Attorney's Office. This sounds like wire fraud, conspiracy, possibly RICO if we can prove an ongoing criminal enterprise. That threat language elevates this significantly. We're talking potential violent crime conspiracy. How long until you can move on this? Garrett, if what you're telling me is accurate, we already have an open investigation into HOA fraud in your county. You just handed us our primary targets and evidence. We'll coordinate with local law enforcement, but here's what I need you to do. Act completely normal. Don't change anything about your behavior. If they're planning this fake sinkhole emergency, we need to catch them in the act. The next 10 days were the longest of my life. I continued my normal routine. Went to work, mowed my lawn to exactly 2 3/4 inches, waved politely to Cordelia when I saw her driving by, though she never waved back. Sarah told me the FBI had opened a full investigation. They'd subpoenaed records from the HOA's bank, from Devon's accounts, and from several financial institutions. They'd verified that the offshore accounts mentioned in the emails existed, and that funds matching the HOA's payments had been transferred there. They'd also analyzed that threat email. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit concluded it represented credible intent to harm, especially in context with the escalating harassment campaign. I started parking in my garage, varying my routines, looking over my shoulder. On a Thursday morning, I received a notice that there would be an emergency HOA board meeting that evening at 7 p.m. The subject, critical infrastructure emergency requiring immediate action. Sarah texted me, "It's happening. We're ready. Act surprised. Let her present everything. Don't react. We'll be there." I showed up at the community center at 6:59. About 30 other homeowners were there, looking confused and concerned. Estelle caught my eye and gave a small nod. She knew something was happening, though I hadn't told her the details. Cordelia stood at the front of the room, looking more animated than usual, almost excited. Harold Pemberton sat next to her, shuffling papers nervously. At precisely 7 o'clock, Cordelia called the meeting to order. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming on such short notice. We have a genuine emergency on our hands. This afternoon, during routine maintenance inspection, a significant sinkhole was discovered in the northwest section of our common area near the retention pond. The structural engineer I consulted says it poses an immediate safety risk. Children could fall in, vehicles could collapse into it." Pulled up photos on the projection screen. A large depression in the ground, easily 6 feet across and appearing to be several feet deep. Trees tilting dangerously, cracked earth radiating outward. It looked terrifying. The engineer recommends immediate remediation before someone gets hurt, or worse. I've obtained an emergency quote from our trusted contractor, Blackstone Services. Due to the urgency and specialized nature of the work, the cost is $18,000. I'm requesting authorization to release these funds immediately so work can begin tomorrow morning." Harold was about to second the motion when Jim, my neighbor, spoke up. "Cordelia, I walked past that area this morning around 7 when I was walking my dog. I didn't see any sinkhole. When exactly was this discovered?"
The inspection was conducted this afternoon at approximately 2 p.m.
Another neighbor, Margaret, raised her hand.
Can I see those photos again? Something looks odd about the background vegetation. Those don't look like our trees. What are you suggesting? I'm showing you photographic evidence of... Those are Palo Verde trees in the background. We don't have those here. Those grow in Arizona.
The room erupted in whispers. Cordelia's face went pale, then flushed deep red. "This is absurd. Are you questioning my integrity? I've served this community for..." The door burst open. 6 FBI agents in tactical gear poured into the room, followed by 2 uniformed county sheriff's deputies. "Nobody move, federal agents." Sarah was third through the door, her badge held high. "Cordelia Blackstone, stand up and place your hands where I can see them. You're under arrest for wire fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and racketeering. Harold Pemberton, you're also under arrest as an accomplice." The room exploded in confusion, people jumping up, shouting questions, pulling out phones to record. Cordelia stood frozen for a moment, then tried to run for the back door. 2 agents intercepted her before she made it 3 steps. They cuffed her hands behind her back while reading her rights. "This is a mistake. You can't do this. I'm a respected member of this community. I'll sue all of you, every single one of you." "Mrs. Blackstone, we have emails detailing your conspiracy with your brother Devin to defraud this HOA of over $60,000. We have evidence of fabricated emergencies, fictitious contracts, and offshore money transfers. We also have evidence of threats made to a witness. You have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it." Sarah approached me as other agents secured the scene and began interviewing witnesses. "Garrett, thank you for your cooperation. You should know that agents in Phoenix arrested Devin Blackstone approximately 15 minutes ago as he was boarding a flight to Costa Rica with $63,000 in cash. The timing had been perfect. They'd coordinated the arrests to prevent either suspect from warning the other." "What the hell is going on?" Sarah addressed the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Special Agent Sarah Haven with the FBI. The investigation into your HOA's finances began several months ago as part of a broader probe into fraudulent community association practices. Thanks to evidence provided by one of your residents," she gestured toward me, "we were able to establish a clear pattern of fraud and conspiracy. You'll all be contacted for witness statements, but fundamentally, you should know that your HOA has been systematically defrauded of over $60,000 through fake contracts and inflated invoices. We're working to recover those funds." The next few weeks were a blur of depositions, witness statements, and forensic accounting reviews. The FBI's investigation revealed the full extent of the scheme. Devin Blackstone had been running his fraud operation across multiple HOAs in 3 states, Arizona, Nevada, and ours. Total theft exceeded $400,000. Cordelia had been his primary accomplice in our community, but they'd recruited board members in other HOAs as well. Harold Pemberton, it turned out, was just lazy and incompetent, not criminal. He'd rubber-stamped everything Cordelia put in front of him without reading it. The FBI declined to prosecute him, though he resigned from the board in disgrace. The fake sinkhole photos? They were from an actual sinkhole that had opened up in a Phoenix suburb 2 years earlier. Devin had simply saved the news photos and tried to pass them off as current and local. 8 months later, Cordelia Blackstone stood in federal court. The charges were extensive: wire fraud, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, racketeering, money laundering, and witness intimidation. The prosecution had emails, financial records, testimony from dozens of victims, and forensic evidence of the offshore accounts. Her attorney tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the U.S. Attorney's Office wasn't interested in leniency, not with the pattern of behavior across multiple states and the threat against me. The judge's statement at sentencing was unequivocal. Mrs. Blackstone, you held a position of trust within your community. People relied on you to act in their best interests, to be a faithful steward of their resources. Instead, you systematically betrayed that trust for personal gain. Your actions weren't impulsive or desperate. They were calculated, organized, and sustained over years. The threat you made against Mr. Wolfson elevates your conduct from mere financial crime to something far more sinister. This court cannot and will not treat such behavior lightly. Cordelia Blackstone was sentenced to 22 years in federal prison. No possibility of parole for at least 15 years. Devon received 15 years for his role in the broader conspiracy. Asset forfeiture proceedings recovered most of the stolen money. The offshore accounts were seized. Cordelia's house, purchased with fraud proceeds, was sold, with the equity distributed to victim HOAs. Devon's property in Phoenix met the same fate. Our HOA recovered approximately $58,000 of the $63,000 stolen from us. The remaining gap was covered by the insurance policy we maintained for exactly this kind of fraud. Special assessments were reversed. Fines Cordelia had levied against me and others were voided. The board was restructured with independent oversight and mandatory financial audits. Estelle nominated me for HOA treasurer. I initially declined, but the community insisted. They wanted someone with legal experience and a proven track record of standing up to corruption. I accepted. People often ask me if I'm angry about what happened, if I resent the harassment, the stress, the months of investigation. Honestly, no. I'm grateful I had the skills and resources to fight back. I'm grateful for neighbors like Estelle who cared enough to speak up. I'm grateful for Sarah and the FBI agents who took the case seriously. But mostly, I'm grateful that justice actually worked. HOA fraud is more common than people realize. Small communities with volunteer boards and limited oversight create opportunities for exactly this kind of abuse. Most of it goes undetected because residents don't have the legal background to recognize the warning signs, or they're too intimidated to challenge board authority. Cordelia's mistake, if you can call it that, was targeting someone who understood the law and wasn't afraid to use it. If she'd just left me alone, she and Devon might have continued their operation indefinitely. I got a phone call last month from Sarah. She'd been promoted to supervisory special agent and was heading up the white-collar crime division's task force on HOA and community association fraud. Garrett, I wanted you to know that your case has become a training example at Quantico. We're teaching agents how to recognize and investigate this type of organized fraud. You probably saved a lot of people from becoming victims. I just documented what was happening and trusted the system to work. That's exactly what you're supposed to do. Not everyone has the courage. Looking back on everything, the harassment, the investigation, the trial, I realized something important. Evil doesn't usually look like a movie villain. It looks like a well-dressed woman with a nice car and a position of authority. It looks normal, respectable. It hides behind rules and regulations and the assumption that people in charge deserve to be there. The only defense against it is vigilance. Asking questions, demanding accountability, refusing to be intimidated. Cordelia Blackstone thought she could bully me into silence. She thought her position gave her immunity. She was wrong, and anyone else who tries the same thing will learn the same lesson, because some of us fight back, and sometimes, just sometimes, the good guys win. My name is Garrett Wolfson. This is my story, and it's finally over.